Hello, and welcome to this session on managed releases with Spinnaker. Before I get started, let me tell you about the company that I represent. We are OpsMx, a leading provider of continuous delivery solutions. We are an experienced team with people who have worked previously in companies like Netflix, Cisco, Oracle, AWS. We have offices all over the US and India. We have 80 plus employees, and we are very active in the open source community, working with Spinnaker, Kubernetes, Jenkins, and we have significant contributions that we have made to each of these projects. As service offering, we provide 24/7 support, manage Spinnaker, and as well as professional services in helping you onboard and automate your CD pipelines around Spinnaker. With that, let's get into and look at what is Spinnaker. Spinnaker is a continuous delivery platform. It originated out of Netflix, where they have been doing continuous delivery at the rate of almost 8,000 a day. And this number is probably from a year ago. So that number may have even gone up. So where does a typical enterprise sit? They're typically able to make releases, earlier was 7-8 months is really a good release cycle, but maybe they're even longer. Now, people want to bring that down to a few months, to maybe a few weeks, to days, to a maturity level of Netflix where you're able to make multiple releases a day. And Spinnaker is a tool that allows you to achieve that maturity level. So there are quite a few continuous delivery tools out there. So what's the benefit or advantage of Spinnaker? It includes support of deployment to multiple cloud environments, be it Kubernetes or flavors of Kubernetes like OpenShift or AWS, Azure, and that's just to name a few of the major ones. So it abstracts out the cloud and allows you to deal at an abstraction level with each of these clouds. I'll take a few minutes right after this to show you Spinnaker so that you get a hang of it before we get into how we do managed releases. Like I said, it allows you to do automated releases, safe deployments. Like, if you are doing that many releases a day, how do you know that a release went out that's bad? And then how do you recover from it? So there are built-in rollback mechanisms so that you can test. And if you find out that your new release is not as good, you can easily and quickly roll back automatically. And the other nice thing about this is that it provides you visibility and control across your applications, across the different cloud providers. You don't need to log into different UIs, consoles for different vendors and providers and have visibility and control over what's going on, and especially in context to the application. So it's a foundational platform for continuous delivery that can be quite easily extended to match your requirements. Maybe at this time I'll spend a few minutes to really show you what Spinnaker is. Some of you may be aware of it. If you're not aware of it, it's really geared to those of you. Probably I'll take 4 or 5 minutes to spend to show you Spinnaker. Spinnaker actually has applications, right? Applications are things that your departments, your organizations deploy, your sales applications, your marketing applications. So if you go into any applications, you can see what are the infrastructure behind it, right? You have your clusters, which are your server groups that's serving that applications. You can have load balancers behind them. You can have firewalls. Even right now, Spinnaker started supporting serverless functions, and you can manage them right from here. So you can think about an application being represented here as the inventory of all the resources that are part of your application, right? Like you can see here, you can have different providers here. You can manage them from one. So you can have the same application being deployed to different environments, some to AWS, some to Google Cloud, some to some Kubernetes environment. So all you can do all that in the context of the same application. And you can have also different accounts in there. The main thing is that especially when you're doing continuous delivery, you don't want a developer to push code straight to production, right? You want gates in between. So that's where accounts come into play, and you have access control to control who has access to what accounts. So what you can control is that users who have the permissions can deploy to dev or stage environments, but only the ops folks can promote to production. Just to quickly show you, the ability to view and control it. So if I go look at this, say there is this application right over here. Let me just find one that seems to be more current. Let's say this application that's over there. I can see all aspects of that application. I can control this application right from here, including scaling it out. And it will also show me all the different like instances running in that application. This being a Kubernetes application, these are the pods that are running. And I can see even the output of those pods, right from here. So I don't need to give out kubectl files and all that for people to access that. Now, how do I get these infrastructure components up and running? It's by virtue of these pipelines. That's really the power of Spinnaker, where as you make releases, you can create pipelines. So what you can do is, you can define your workflow in a UI way, but Spinnaker is basically what you can call as pipeline as code. It enables GitOps type operations. So you can have all of these as code. Everything is represented as a JSON file. So this whole pipeline, the visual representation you are seeing, is available as a JSON file. As part of the pipeline, you can configure and have automated triggers. Triggers can come in anywhere from a Git check-in or to a new image being published to a Docker repository. You could even have them scheduled to run at frequent intervals, right? You can pass in parameters to your pipeline so that you can use the same pipeline to deploy to stage 1 and stage 2, or even stage and production 2. Just vary the parameters and deploy them. And then you can have also notifications being sent out if something goes wrong. It integrates with Slack, email. So once you have configured the initial setup, you can add stages that do different things. Like this is a stage that calls a Jenkins job. This is a stage that actually deploys to Kubernetes. So there are tons of stages built in, first-class objects or actions that are built in that allows you to build a pretty complex pipeline. And also Spinnaker allows you to extend it very easily. In fact, part of my demo later on would include extending Spinnaker to enable you to do release management. So that is about building a pipeline where you can build complex pipelines and run them. And once they are run, you can actually monitor what's going on over there. This is all good, so not much to look at, but if something went wrong, say your Jenkins build failed, you have a link straight from here to Jenkins. You can go and look at the Jenkins pipeline to see what went wrong in log file. Also, as part of the Jenkins build, it did a build, and it actually passes back the build number, which is used as a tag in the image. And this is used in subsequent stages to deploy that image, right? To make sure that you are deploying the image that was built. Similarly, you can see the results of deployments. Like this was a deployment that happened. You can go look at the actual YAML got deployed. You will notice Spinnaker adds a lot of extra annotations so that it can manage these resources successfully. And you can even go look at the resource. So it will show you that it's a resource right over here. Everything about that resource. So that's in short, like, what Spinnaker is about. It basically, it's like an inventory of your application. It shows you all the infrastructure behind that application, and then it has pipelines for you to deploy that application in a continuous fashion, right? So that's a good tool, Spinnaker, right? It does continuous delivery. Now, like I showed in the previous slide, each company, organization is at a different maturity level. So what if I am not doing continuous delivery? I do not want code moving in from check-in by a developer to production in a matter of minutes, if not in matter of hours, if not minutes. What if I want to choose what I want to promote to the next stage? What if I want to choose the features that want to go on to the next stage? What if I want to plan and schedule a release where you work with the stakeholders, product managers, QA leads to define what's going out? And then also have these different stakeholders sign off what needs to be promoted, sort of like an approval process. Is Spinnaker not for me then? Yes, Spinnaker, you can use Spinnaker, and not without, like, writing a lot of custom scripts and all that. You can use Spinnaker to do exactly what you want it to do. The question that comes up, hey, there's a lot of tools out there that orchestrate this process I just talked about. All these manage the releases, what goes into a release. But talking to a lot of companies, unless you have built a custom solution, yes, those processes are there, but they automate the business aspect of it, getting approvals from different processes, providing inputs as to what features are in there. But that tool doesn't really integrate very well with the actual deployment process. At least a few customers where I interacted with, they have the process, and then when it's ready to be done, they create a Jira ticket assigned to someone. Then that person gets the Jira ticket, runs some scripts. Once it's successful, they assign the Jira ticket back to someone to do the next part of the delivery process. So that whole process becomes quite long. And in the process, sometimes a step gets missed or the ball gets dropped and you have a broken release. So the cost of delivering a release that way is pretty high, right? It would be nice if you could actually integrate all that business process associated with software delivery along with actually delivering the software, right? And that's what, we'll look at how you can do that using Spinnaker. So an approach to do that using Spinnaker is, you use a bill of materials to define what gets released. Based on everything, your, say, release manager decides that, of the 10 releases, I'm going to release version A of the software, version B, or version A of a component of a software, version B of a component of a software. And then you integrate all the approval process in it, like, building it, then deploying it to some staging environment, run tests with it, have people validate it, and then get approvals to move it on to the next stage, right? All that can be achieved using a Spinnaker pipeline. What does it look like? I showed you a pipeline. So example of such a Spinnaker pipeline could be is that I manage this bill of materials, and I'll come to an example of a bill of materials we used at a few customers, is I basically manage the bill of materials in some source control, right? Once I make a change to that and commit it, it's propagated. It triggers this pipeline, which actually would read that file and inject it into the pipeline, which would go ahead and deploy the different services, the version of the services. Then you do a validate of deployment. And if you're ready, you will promote it to the next stage, right? Let's look at what an example of a BOM can be like. It could have all the list of services that's being installed. You may not install all service in the release, right? Or promote all the services. So you determine if the service is being released or not. And what's the version of the release or the image that's going to be published. Here we'd be doing it with a Kubernetes application. And you can also include other parameters that may be part of your release. Things like, hey, I want to make this release to only say US region, or I want to release this only to EMEA region, right? So all those also you can include as part of this BOM file and have it picked up, your pipeline pick it up and deploy. Having this pipeline being source controlled, it's versioned, so you will know what got released when. You can have an approval process, right? If this is managed in Git, you edit this, and this becomes your source of truth of what's being released and approved. And once it's approved and merged, it can trigger off your deployment pipeline. And being part of Git or any other source control, you would have an audit history of who made change, what changes were made. So it really gives you a very good idea about what's being released. Okay. Let's look at a demo of that. But before we go there, you could include even approvals at that process, right? Approvals could include, integrations with Jira or ServiceNow, or policy checks with conformance. Like, before you release anything, you need to have SonarQube coverage of, say, 80% or better. Or you want to have your image scanned with no critical or high vulnerabilities detected. So you can have all those checks built in, not rely on someone to run that check and give you a thumbs up, automatically included. And then finally, especially when you're promoting to production, if you are not ready for continuous delivery, you want some manual checks in there before you promote. And that's what you can actually do. So to look at a demo, here I have a pipeline just like we talked about. Let's look at this one here. This is exactly the pipeline I talked about. It's triggered by a BOM file change, which I will show it to you and make a change and trigger it. It takes in a parameter of a namespace so that, to show that I can control deployment to different spaces. Then moving on to the next stage, this is where the sort of the secret sauce is, where we leverage Spinnaker to actually read the file and inject the contents of that file into a Spinnaker pipeline. Here is a little script to show that, but typically what you would do is you would encapsulate this in a custom stage and make it available in Spinnaker. I have it here so that, I can use it to show people what exactly is being done. Then, based on that, you deploy it to your different services. I'm taking a very simple case of deploying an Nginx and Postgres. And here you will see that the image is actually, I'm making it a parameter. And this parameter was injected into the pipeline in this stage. Once I deploy all the services, I'll do a validate. If everyone's satisfied with the validation, then I'll promote it to production. And then in deploy to production, it picks up another pipeline that does exactly the same. So in this, while I'm deploying to production, I am passing in the same BOM file, the reference to the BOM file and the version, to the deploy to production so that it picks up the exact same BOM file and pretty much goes through the same process, injected the contents into the pipeline and deploy the services, right? Let's go look at that BOM file, which I showed you, pretty much like this, right? You have the different services, the images, and let's say I want to decide that, okay, I'm ready, we'll be upgrading everything to the next version. So I go to that Nginx, I'm moving to the next version. Postgres, I'm moving to the next version. Everybody looks at it, comments, everything, and then, okay, I approve the change. It's getting committed. When I go back and look at my pipeline, I see that it has started running. It triggered this pipeline and it is running. And so what this is doing right now is going and fetching the details. So while it's running, let me show you some of these from an existing pipeline that ran already. So if you look at this pipeline, this is the stage that ran. And when I look at the output of the stage, you will see that it actually fetched that exact file content right over here, right? And then these are made available into a Spinnaker pipeline so that anyone can ask or use these as variables in their pipelines. Next, actually, that it did it, I have this evaluate variable stage to show that. Like, if I look at what Nginx is, it tells me it is this image version, install true, namespace. It shows me all those values in there. It also shows me the Git trigger that got passed in. It tells me this is the reference to the Git, this is the version that came in. So I can use that in subsequent stages to fetch it. So here we see that it all ran over here, right? And it's waiting for me to say, should I promote it to the next stage or not? Let me go ahead and do that. I say, okay, everything looks great. Let's promote it. And I say, continue. What we'll see is that I have the second pipeline right over here that will get triggered. And if I look at the parameters, it gets parameters passed, the BOM file and the version that came in from the previous stage. And so it will pick these up and start deploying. Let's look at the infrastructure. If you remember, we had earlier versions and the new version should have got deployed. Let's wait for this page to refresh because we asked it to deploy the next versions of it. Let me refresh this page. Spinnaker does take a few minutes to refresh and sync its information. So here you can see that Spinnaker identified that the next version, actually it's getting deployed to target. Let's look at target. You will see that Nginx 117 is already deployed over here, and the old version has been sort of deprecated, right? So what you see here is how you can use Spinnaker to control what versions of all the services get deployed, not necessarily have continuous delivery, right? You plan releases, determine what releases would get promoted, and promote them through the whole process in an automated fashion. That's all I wanted to demo for now. Hope you found it useful. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them right now.
Hello. Hopefully you found the session informative. So if you have any questions on the session, you can type it in the chat and I'd be happy to answer them. Yeah, for everyone, if you have any questions, you can use the chat to ask it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Or if you have any other questions later on, feel free to reach out to me. I think it may have been in the schedule, but it's really my first name at OpsMx.io is where you can reach out to me. There's this question about, does Spinnaker work alongside Jenkins? Yes, absolutely. Spinnaker integrates with a lot of existing tools. You don't need to really throw away and rewrite everything you have. You can use your existing infrastructure, including Jenkins. So if you have Jenkins, there are stages available that you can use to invoke the Jenkins to, like, do the build jobs and all. And even it was the other way around, is that you can trigger a Spinnaker pipeline to do a deployment once a Jenkins job successfully completes. So there is that both bi-directional integration available with Spinnaker. So hope that answered the question for you, Jayesh. There is another question: how to start with Hello World-ish app with Spinnaker. Installing Spinnaker is very easy. There is a website or there is a blog that I have written and published. If you go and search on the OpsMx blog, blog.opsmx.com, about installing Spinnaker with Helm, you will find a blog that you can use to install Spinnaker in a Kubernetes cluster in less than 10 minutes and create a Hello World type application. It actually does walk you through deploying nginx, step by step. Really, people have followed it and then been able to get up and running with Spinnaker. So go to blog.opsmx.com and search for installing Spinnaker with Helm or Spinnaker Helm, and you will find the blog. There is another question: what are your thoughts on using and/or Miniker? Is it good tool to deploy or just stick with Spinnaker? I think you can stick with Spinnaker. So what Miniker tries to do is just, provide a developer version of it, bring it up. But, if you already have a Kubernetes cluster available or even have Minikube running on your machine, it's really about running an Helm chart, and that will get you up and running with Spinnaker. So what you should do is, the blog that I just talked about, you can go there and just run the blog in less than 10 minutes. You would have a Spinnaker up and running. So stick with Spinnaker. How's the install process for Spinnaker? Similar question, so which is good. I think just to play around with Spinnaker, it's simple, easy. Really, if you have a Kubernetes cluster available, less than 10 minutes, really, in my view, using the Helm chart that's available. So now, obviously, if you want to go to production, have thousands of pipelines running, you need to do some planning around it, how you scale up the components, how you set up for HA and all that. And that's where I think we come in and can help you guys. But just for playing around and using it, it's really simple. There's one more question. Does OpsMx provide service to help with proof of concepts? Absolutely, you can. And any tool like this is simple as well as complex. It takes a while for you to understand the tool, how to use it. So that's where definitely we can come in and help you, understand your use case and how you can best leverage the power and features of Spinnaker to your advantages. So, if you think you need help, definitely reach out to us at OpsMx. Okay, we do have a booth in our in the booth area, so definitely drop by or reach out to us at OpsMx.com. Okay, I think I'll take one last question because the next session starts in 5 minutes, and this one is: Spinnaker was built as a cloud agnostic. How it is much flexible with non-cloud environments? Yes, Spinnaker has been built for cloud environments, but Spinnaker, like I say, is very extensible, right? So if you have APIs available to interact with your non-cloud environments, you could definitely use Spinnaker to interact with and deploy to non-cloud environments too. It's a very extensible tool that you can integrate and extend to do other things. So with that, I think we're out of time. Thank you everyone for attending. Thanks for all those great questions. I hope you found this informative. And if you have further questions, you can either reach out to me directly at nirmalya@opsmx.io or visit our booth. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the virtual summit.